When I first started thinking about creating the Willing to Win series, I didn't have the words to express what I was feeling, why I felt it was so important to help people understand and prepare for the future, why I felt so compelled to take action. I'd long understood that increasing rates of change meant ever more frequent changes in the way our world works. The prospect didn't bother me one bit. In fact, it was exciting. The future is where our journey to the stars will unfold. The future is where tomorrow's medical advances will change how we live and how long we live. And of course, the future is where all the cool tech is. Out there in tomorrow, the iPhone 56 is just waiting for us. Oh yeah, and I hear it's going to be a real game changer. You see, I wasn't worried about change because I've adapted to changing times before. I wasn't born with the internet or cell phones, but I adopted these and other technologies with little issue. I thought that a future with more and more frequent change would just mean the same as now, only with a progressively heavier load. Wrong. There comes a time when each of us maxes out, the point when we can't take any more, when each straw becomes progressively more likely to break the camel's back. And if the world ignores our limits and keeps throwing more and more frequent change at us anyway, something's got to give. It's a game of chicken that we can't possibly win because change doesn't yield. Change does not have the capacity to slow down or pause. So if we don't stop, and it's impossible for us to focus on everything that's happening around us, the only practical option we have is to narrow our focus, to simply exclude everything that exceeds our processing limits. This isn't a new phenomenon, it's simply magnified because there's only one of us and a big world out there, populated by billions of people, all thinking and talking, acting and reacting. We've never been able to grasp everything that's happening all at once. So we focus on what's most important. What's happening in our part of the world, our part of the organization, our part of our community. Over time, it starts feeling like our part of the world is the world, the only world. Our part of the organization is the organization. Our part of our community is the community. Each an integral part of a one-of-a-kind reality, the reality we create for ourselves. In a world populated by some 8 billion people, each of us constructs and populates a reality uniquely our own. The very notion of a single shared reality is forever shattered, replaced instead by 8 billion versions of reality operating simultaneously. Enter the leader. Enter the leader whose superhuman task is to galvanize and orchestrate the attention, efforts, and resources of others towards a common end. And that's the key. Strategy is a strategy in itself. Rather than attempting to somehow reshape follower realities, leaders may opt instead to introduce an entirely new reality and invite others to join. There it is. You see, strategy isn't some stiff academic concept that you have to go to school for years to learn and even longer to master. It's just a commercial, an advertisement, a promise of what could and should be, a glimpse of some desirable future reality, a reason to believe that it's possible, and an idea that needs to be done and needs to happen. Strategy is just an invitation to be a part of creating something great. Trying to build a future for your family? You're a strategist. Are you single and don't want to be? You're a strategist. Trying to accelerate your career? You're a strategist. From the edge of tomorrow, we're a growing legion of people learning how to harness the power of change to build a brighter future. We invite you to join us and be a part of it all. This is Willing to Win. If you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Welcome to Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas-Gettman. This is going to be more than worth your time because we are diving headfirst into strategy, and it sounds like a pretty straightforward approach, but when you really examine strategy, as you've done for your whole career, it's a very complex prospect in terms of how we interpret it.
Yeah, I'll never forget being a kid and going up to the newsstand, right, and saving up my money to buy a Harvard Business Review, right, because that's what the smart people read, right? And I was going to read about all these complicated things that you needed to go to an Ivy League school to understand, and you have to have a brilliant brain to understand strategy. But we've spent the last 30 years, examining it.
When we have so much coming at us, the strategies that we've come to fall into, the patterns of our life, when they're disrupted, what do? I'm lost in terms of how to move forward from a strategic vision. Purpose.
Yeah, a lot of times, and I'll see parents, especially like with you and your kids, I'll just see you just reacting, just all day. We're doing something while you're doing something else, trying to get people to a tournament, and trying to make your own schedules so that it works. There's just a lot that people have to balance. And so as we started writing the books, and as to remind our audience, part of the Willing to Win, program, and part of everything we're doing is an advance of a series of books that'll come out explaining these concepts to more and more people that normally wouldn't have access to them or wouldn't think that it was something important in their life.
The pandemic really typifies that, because we instantly did have to change whether we wanted to or not. There was no, holing up in our bedroom and saying, oh, let me wake up and hopefully this will go away. I mean, this has stuck for months, if not years, into impacting change among us. You have researched over the years and worked with so many companies, and you have an example of how strategy can go bad or fall flat or not really take the, be accepted in the manner that it was meant to be delivered. Explain that.
Absolutely. I was going around for a number of years. We did this sort of global sales training tour, went to 26 countries over and over again, and worked with a large telecommunication firm to help them get their sales strategies, on track. And in so doing, I created this deck where I talked a lot about strategy, helping salespeople understand the strategy of their customers. So I pulled out the best strategy that was going at the time, which is the strategy for Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo reoriented everything they were thinking, and what they were trying to accomplish in terms of relationships, and how to basically have the whole organization think differently, work differently, and do more with more people than ever before. And so I'm showing this right about the time that the news breaks that Wells Fargo has done some less than appropriate things in terms of opening up accounts for their customers that shouldn't have been open and so forth, all to push sales figures. And so it didn't look too good that I was showing that example. So I just want to say here and now, it is still a great example of strategy, but you have to have people that are ethical to run that strategy.
And that is such a good point, because what we know today is, due to this sort of information overload that we all talk about and that we live in, a click of a mouse, a Google search, you can uncover the man behind the curtain of these companies. You can't hide behind your strategy, because people will find you through the internet. And as we know, that's not a bad thing, right? Because as you talk about, part of the transparency lends itself to sincerity and adaptation of strategy.
Right, and that's the thing, what it takes to win and stay winning, which is what Willing to Win is all about. What it takes to win and stay winning are two different things, right? Because by the time you get the recipe for what it takes to win right now, the environment will have changed and there's a new recipe out there. And I think it's really important to note, think back in your own lives, especially if you're a little older and have been around for a few decades, you can remember that when change used to come slowly, and then it's almost like, oh yeah, it is different now. I forgot that, because it came in slowly. It's sort of like, we didn't have, email, and then it was like everybody's doing email. We didn't have text, then everybody had a BlackBerry. But it was fairly slow, and you had time to adjust to it. And it was almost like, yeah, that did change, right? But now it's like, it's just hitting you in the face.
Exactly.
And you got to keep up, or you run the risk of not being relevant in your own world.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing that we all tend to do, especially this, TikTok generation, is we want to simplify everything, dumb it down, and, whether it's a lack of complexity because we're not at that intellectual level, I think it's more, we just don't have the attention span. We talk about this sort of that ADHD approach, which we all experience through the scrolling on social media. That has also, unintended consequence, resulted in people not fully grasping what strategy is, what does it mean? And so we found an example. Indeed, a popular website, places where job seekers are, going on the internet to find a lot of guidance.
Oh, you mean Indeed, the website?
Exactly, right?
Indeed. Well, Indeed, tell us.
I wasn't being that profound, right? So on Indeed, we discovered that there was a very sort of snappy blog, short explanation, if you will, of what is strategy. And so the way this was broken down into 6 components, it was interesting because when we do our producer meetings and our sort of research content dives prior to the broadcasts, we discovered that of these 6 things listed, so vision and business objectives, core values, SWOT analysis, which many of you in marketing would know, that strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, tactics, resource allocation, and measurement, we are then being sort of guided to believe that that's what strategy encompasses, but you would counter differently.
Oh yeah, strategy is, it's really overcomplicated, right? And I think that the reason is that it's got a lot of different contexts, and there's different forms to it. There's the noun form, and then there's the action form, the verb form, and each of those has a little bit of a different flavor. And I think that people feel like they may understand it, or they can put together a series of buzzwords, and somehow that comes out. This is not, as much as I appreciate this organization and I understand the point they were making here, and it's totally valid, but it's not a definition of what strategy really is from a structural standpoint. And part of the problem that we run into when we try to make this accessible to folks is what we call academically derivative, right? And it's just like this shot that academics take and say, oh, that's a very nice way to explain it, but it's very derivative, meaning that somebody else has done it, or you've oversimplified it to the point where it's no longer accurate. And what I say back to that is, I think that we need to prepare ourselves when we have conversations about things that matter, things that are important, things that are complex, that we're trying to simplify. We need to prepare ourselves to have 3 conversations. We need to have the sort of free conversation, right? Just the value proposition where, hey, this is what I think, and if somebody's interested, great. Then they can have the second conversation, which we call the double click conversation, right? Where you go in and you get some of the details and you start supporting what the academics might call derivative, but I call really good communication, because we never get to talk about like the complicated stuff if we don't do the simple stuff and get somebody to want to know about it first off. So you get those details, and then ultimately we want to zoom in, right? So just like a website, free content, then you double click and you get the details, and then you zoom in and you get all the sort of tactical elements. If you do that, then I think we could satisfy both the academics and open up really complex concepts to everyday people, because they deal with them, just like Lucy on the conveyor belt, right?
Oh, I love that. It's a great point, because we don't want all of those best practices and strategies to be reserved for, the think tanks and the researchers. We want that to reach the everyman, and that's what we're trying to do with Willing to Win, is be a conduit to say, hey, it's not just left in a Harvard Business Review journal. It's going to be something you can take out, understand, digest, and apply in your everyday life. Bring that complex strategy, sort of drill it down, and in our way, hopefully, make it plain so that people can understand it and apply it to their everyday lives to improve our lives, right?
Absolutely. And not only, should individuals have access and understand strategy and how it works and how to apply it to get the things they want for their family and their communities, but we should also have access to the strategies of those organizations that we are consumers, that we're consuming. Because I want to know I'm spending my money at a place that, shares my values, or maybe I'm an investor and I want to know what strategy that is. We've done a lot of research, and the book will actually expose a thing that called the Fortune 100 analysis that we've done to really think about, expose what people are, what the top companies in the world are doing in terms of strategy, how they're spending their time and effort. And the strangest thing is, one of the hardest parts of the analysis is there are many organizations that keep their strategy secret, right? Strategy is is a communications device, right? Strategy is a way to gain support and experience. And one of the best examples, and I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions opinions about larger companies, especially, Walmart. But from a strictly strategy communications standpoint, Walmart has a 3-year plan, and we'll put it up here on the screen. Walmart has a 3-year plan that they have put into a graphic, right? And the graphic tells the whole story. It starts out by saying that our plan is to be the first to deliver a seamless shopping experience at scale. And then they say, here are our financial targets, and then they give their 3 strategies that they're trying to accomplish. And it's just really great. They want to win with stores, they want to deepen digital relationships, and they want to add critical capabilities. Now, if I'm an investor and I want to understand where they're focused on and where we can see improvement in the business model, that makes it clear. Why would we want to hide that?
That's a great point.
So I think we have to be transparent, not only in the way that we conduct our business, but in the way that we're focusing our business in terms of our strategy.
And considering how much money I give to Walmart on a monthly basis, it's nice to see that they have a strategy that you deem very successful and effective.
Are you part of that new program? I don't know if you know that. They have a new program at major stores, Walmart and Target, where you just send them money each month. And then they let you know, when no, I'm just kidding.
And sometimes things show up on your doorstep, which is a plus. No pun intended. Walmart Plus is their program where you can get the convenience of groceries delivered to your door.
I get it now, Amazon now. All right, that's that. Bad jokes.
And when you talk about companies like Walmart, another very successful one, especially financially, hello iPhone, is Apple. When we come back, our social media correspondent, Alyssa Nolte, will help us really examine more about how Steve Jobs wasn't necessarily an inventor as much as a culture builder. Don't go anywhere.
The socialite.
Willing to win.
Thanks for staying with Willing to Win. I'm Tara Thomas-Gettman.
And I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And this is Alyssa Nolte, our tried and true social media correspondent.
Socialite.
You have really uncovered so many interesting nuggets. When it comes to the iPhone and Steve Jobs, just give us a little insight about how that whole really game-changing device came to be.
Well, it's no secret that there are people out there who are absolute rabid fans of the iPhone, and I won't even look at anyone at this table who might fall into that category. Maybe an absolute rabid fan of the iPhone. But here's the thing, Jeff. That iPhone almost didn't happen.
No.
Wow.
And it almost didn't look exactly like the one that you have. So the crazy thing is that when they were pitching the iPhone to Steve Jobs, his executive leadership team, he was absolutely expletive against it. He said, absolutely no way. We are not interested in doing the iPhone. I don't want to work with those expletive phone carriers.
My Steve Jobs?
Your Steve Jobs said that. Because back in the day, the phone carriers had a really strong control over what phones looked like, what they could and couldn't do. And Steve Jobs, being the Steve Jobs that we all know and love, had no interest in playing in someone else's sandbox. He wanted to make his own rules. And at the same time, he was launching the iPod, and the iPod was doing really, really well. So why cannibalize a market on a product that you're already really doing well with? So over time, they convinced him that this was a good option. And they started to build the iPhone. And it looked nothing like the iPhone that you would expect today. In fact, it was the size of a pool table to start.
That is crazy.
Because,
A pool table?
Yeah, a pool table. Because they were exploring making it into a MacBook. The iPhone, the first iPhone actually wasn't a phone. It was a computer. They walked into a room and they were exploring, how do I make a Mac into a computer? And that's when they discovered that instead, we don't want an iPhone. We don't want a phone that can play music. We don't want an iPod that can make phone calls. We want a tiny computer in your pocket that can do everything a computer can do and can make phone calls. And that's how the iPhone was born. But here's the crazy thing and what it comes down to strategy. Steve Jobs didn't invent the iPhone. He was very against the iPhone. He had no interest in becoming a phone building company. He wanted to be the iPod company. But he created a culture where he had senior leadership who saw this opportunity to do something great, who saw this opportunity to change the way we use devices. And they took that opportunity and they convinced him to try. So check out this quote from one of his biographers. Jobs was a powerful source of inspiration, a fierce curator of good ideas and a rejecter of bad ones, and a savvy and potent negotiator. This is from Brian Merchant, author of The One Device. But the iPhone began as an experimental project undertaken without his knowledge, became an official project at the prodding of his executive staff, and was engineered into being by a team of brilliant, unfathomably hardworking programmers and hardware experts. Steve Jobs might not have invented the iPhone, but he created a culture where people thought it was okay to go against the wishes of the founder, a man notorious for being difficult to work with, because he knew exactly what he wanted and he did not want the iPhone.
Well, that's
concept.
really awesome. First of all, I want to commend you for saying unfathomable. I've had that in scripts
I
before.
practiced a lot for that.
It's very difficult. But the other thing I think is really important is when we started to do deep research using our Tempo and our Marquee survey tools, we started doing deep research into leadership. We found that one of the most important factors to creating a successful leadership environment and being able to really execute strategies with excellence is to make permissions explicit within an organization. And I didn't know what your conclusion was going to be on your analysis, but I'm thinking the whole time like, well, we've got the iPhone, so in the end, they had enough belief in themselves, or they had enough permissions to feel like they could push back.
Exactly.
That's absolutely what needs to happen. And so hats off to Steve again.
I mean, could you imagine Apple without the iPhone?
No, right?
I can't imagine anything without the iPhone.
Well, and that leads us to what we often sort of talk about all the time, that communication and the way you deliver your strategy is key. And not everyone is going to get it right the first time, right? And that doesn't just apply to a person who rejects what turns out to be the biggest idea, that the multi-billion-dollar idea of all time, the iPhone. It also applies to how we misinterpret slogans, the strategy behind a marketing campaign. And the Lost in Translation deep dive led us to uncover some funny ways that things did not land like the marketing or brand intended.
Yeah, in the production meeting, we started talking about this, and it reminded me, as you could tell, I've got quite a library here, and yes, I've read the books, and one of the books that I really enjoyed years ago was a thing called Megatrends, and in Megatrends, it talked a little bit about some of the mistakes people make, culturally or in trying to communicate effectively that don't work, especially when you go across cultural lines. So here's a couple of those. In Spain, when the Coors Brewing Company translated its slogan, "Turn it loose," into Spanish, it read as "Suffer from diarrhea." So come get this can of beer, and you too can suffer from diarrhea. That's very motivating, right?
I think that's what they were going for.
Where's the mistake, right? And then when Pepsi entered China, it launched the slogan, when Pepsi Pepsi brings you back to life, right? Do you remember that? Basically, it's refreshing, right? Pepsi brings you back to life. And that was translated in the local language and local dialect to Pepsi brings your ancestors back from the grave. So I'm thinking that'd be a great beverage for Halloween night, but it's kind of freaky the rest of the time.
Oh my gosh. And we also have found that, and we've talked about this, that so many times, if you have the sort of silos across your company, perhaps there was somebody in the company, when you think about how far-reaching a PepsiCo would be, if you had just run that past somebody who had some background in Chinese culture, there probably would have been somebody that sounded the alarm. But so often in these companies, we just get into these sort of silos where we aren't collaborative. And that's what really can be key, right, when executing strategy, is having that collaborative permission to be able to go up to the dude when you're not working in marketing and say, wait a minute, that's not going to be received the way that you intend.
And those are big misses, right? So you'd assume that would be the case, but it really goes to the point that you want to have a broad spectrum of people to collaborate with. Not everybody has to come with all the content or all the great ideas, but sometimes just having an extra set of eyes to make sure you don't make a huge mistake. And I'll give you a great example. We just spent some time earlier in the A block talking about the strategy for Walmart, right? And it's my favorite example of strategy. I think it's the best that's ever been done in the form that we're advocating. But on that sheet, which tells you everything you need to know, everybody from the top executive all the way down to the cashier or the door greeter can see the strategy, can figure out how they play into it. There's no date on it. we don't know, and it's not included in the annual report. So it's just a strange
a minor
kind of
detail would impact how the 3-year term would unfold.
It's a 3-year strategy. What 3 years? We leave that up to.
That's a great
the
point.
mystery. You can know our strategy, but not when it applies.
Well, we have had a great opportunity to, through Jeff's contacts over all of his years, and thanks to the power of LinkedIn and social media, really connect with so many leaders across so many industries. And we have decided that we need your help to pursue some of these voices that we'd like to include in future broadcasts. So when we come back, we're going to hear about our Legion's Most Wanted. Stay with us.
What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next?
Thanks for staying with Willing to Win. You know, Jeff has talked about the Legion, right? That's you, the audience, everybody who's collectively a part of the Willing to Win movement. And you feel that there are some people who rise to the level of generals. So we're calling it the Legion's Most Wanted, people that we'd like to do a conversation with as a guest on a future broadcast. Tell us who tops the list for today.
Yeah, we've probably done a list of some 500 or 600 interviews that we've done in the past, and some of the folks that we interviewed in the past, we've lost touch with, and they're just people that would be perfect, ideal to be a guest on the show. And one of those folks is John Correll, who used to be with Neiman Marcus in Texas, and I knew him from actually before that opportunity, who now is the president of digital at Canadian Tire in Canada. We would love to have him on the show. This is the gentleman I was telling you about that has made it a practice throughout his career to just be at a coffee shop on Saturday morning at a particular time, and anybody in the company, anybody, can come and have coffee with Correll. And I would love to see how he is sort of updated his approach and what new things he's doing to keep in contact, because he was the guy that was like way ahead of everybody else 10 or 15 years ago when I did that first interview.
That's great. I love that concept of coffee with Correll. And it's a great strategy, right, for somebody at the top to connect with anybody who's a part of the company and what drives
Absolutely.
it. So if you have a connection to John Correll or know somebody who does, or you would like to suggest somebody that we should make a general in our Legion, we'd love to hear from you. Go to our website. It's willingtowin.org, willing2win.org. You can also follow us on social media. We're out on multiple platforms, including YouTube, where you can watch this and so many other episodes, especially if you're only hearing the sound of our voice. We'd love for you to watch our video podcast version. So check us out, Willing to Win, and you can do hashtag Willing to Win, again, willing the number 2 win, or at Dr. Jeff Kaplan is the tag. So coming up, we have a lot more strategy, concepts to share, but let's recap a little bit about what this season entails. And first, just tell us what's something that's a takeaway that the audience can, reflect on from here.
Well, certainly. We'd like to try to give you something you can do in your own life to sort of, experience the things that we're talking about on the show. So this week, that we are basically asking that you share a time, that you share with us a time that you developed a strategy and executed that strategy and were successful. So whether that meant, as a coach in your team, something that happened at work, whatever the case may be, we would like to get some of those examples so we can share them with the rest of the Legion. Please do that. That'd be great.
And I love that you said a coach, because when we think about high level sports, it's all about strategy in many respects, because you can have really talented players, but if you as a coach don't have a strategy that everybody buys into, it may fall flat when you take the floor for March Madness. So I love that. So we are recapping what's to come and what strategy for us entails for this mini season of Willing to Win. So first off, what is strategy? Jeff is an expert in the field, having researched it for years. What does strategy do? How does it impact you, not just on the job, but in your personal life?
If you haven't seen episode 1, that was the topic, and we invite you to see that.
Yeah, so episode 2, what does strategy do? What we've talked about. Coming up, we're going to do strategy and the environment, how the two are really intertwined, and then strategy and information. If you don't have the understanding of the strategy, how can you apply it? And then finally, we're going to look at strategy and the experience, because what we experience all around us in many respects might involve applying strategies more than we even recognize. So thanks again for sticking with Willing to Win. What is strategy? It's something to think about. Join the conversation. We'll see you soon.
These episodes are the first reports filed from the front lines of change, where a growing legion of individuals and organizations are discovering what it takes to win and stay winning in a world defined by change and driven by interconnected human networks.
Willing to Win is produced by Lyft Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.